Making this video on pros and cons of joining the military and the pros and cons of working your whole life. Uh, my journey in work started back in 1978. I was a cook. So I worked as a cook for SeaWorld San Diego. The pay back then was about $2.30 an hour. So rent at that time was about $200 a month. So it's very hard to survive on $2.30 an hour. And we never got tips, so you basically had to just work like a dog for about $100 a week. So that's $400. So that's half your check on just a little small apartment. The apartment was basically a studio apartment. And I did that for a while until the apartment flooded. And basically, the guy tried to keep all my stuff and wanted money when you couldn't even live there. So I ended up in the Marine Corps. Um, I had no choice. Came from a poor background, lower middle class, family that didn't really care about anybody but themselves. So I found myself in the Marines back in 1981. I went in the Marine Corps and I completed the boot camp and graduated in May. And when I graduated, I remember at the time thinking I was very proud of what I did. But I also realized the evilness in people. That's because my dad had committed suicide prior to going in the military. And when he committed suicide, um, the stepmother I had at the time kicked me out of the house, which is why I ended up working at SeaWorld. I think I was in 11th grade at the time. And so I did that for about 6 months, and then I just couldn't afford to keep living. So I went to the Marines. Like a lot of underprivileged kids end up doing, because parents can't afford to keep them. And for the most part, the military was a halfway decent gig. It gave me structure, gave me a reason to have to get up and do certain tasks, which I found that I needed because I think I had some undiagnosed ADHD. So I needed to kind of be told what to do. Otherwise, I just would do anything. I go surf, whatever. But I never had any real direction. My family was more on discipline rather than education. Um, and so by the time my time was up in the military, I understood military life, but I didn't understand civilian life. I had no idea how it worked. So I ended up getting some real low level jobs, warehouse work, stuff like that. And the military didn't really help me get any of that stuff. The military basically was a hindrance to getting into any type of job um, because at the time there was the affirmative action going on. Affirmative action basically says we have to meet certain quotas. We have to hire a certain amount of people. And I wasn't one of the ones they wanted. I passed the test, to get into the post office, but I never got the job. I was given a letter that basically said, "We're sorry to inform you that somebody else has been chosen for the job." I said, "Fine, whatever." And I continued to work these low-level jobs. Couldn't afford to go to school because I was right back at square one after getting out of the military. I was right back to going, now what do I do? No real education as far as college, no degree, no nothing. So I ended up, working a lot of manual type of jobs. And that continued through most of my adulthood. Working jobs that were just bare bones, I guess you'd call it. I worked as a loader, worked as a uh, auto detailer, um, just jobs like that that were just basically paying you just to perform monkey work. And I did that for many years until I finally went to electrical school, and then I learned a trade that took 4 years to learn. And by the time I went to electrical school, I was already in my 30s. I had also already been in the Navy Reserves, so I spent 3 years in the Navy Reserves. So the benefits of the military was the only thing I could really say about the military was it kept me out of trouble. It was really hard to get in trouble in the military. If you did what they told you to do, showed up on time, then they would take care of you. Meaning they would take care of you in all aspects of life. If you needed dental work, they would fix it. You would be assigned to go to the dentist. They would rate you as a certain class of dental type of person. And they want their workers, I guess their little worker bees, to be healthy. Because without good dental work, it's very hard to maintain decent health. So they would take care of you in that regard. They would schedule you to go in and see the dentist, and the dentist would do their thing, and it was usually a military person. But they would, there was a checks and balances that actually worked in the military. On the outside of the military, I never got any of that. I worked even as a busboy. There was no benefit. Um, any job that I ever worked, the benefits were only available after a certain amount of time. And as an electrician, I never got any of the benefits either, as far as healthcare goes. And so one of the benefits of the military was that they did actually give you um, medical. It was okay. I mean, it worked. Um, and then as you get older, the military benefits continue as far as giving you free health care if you qualify for it. To qualify for medical benefits or any type of benefits through the VA system, you basically have to you have to have good conduct, or you can't have any dishonorable discharges or other than honorable, which I had with both, with the military, with the Navy and the Marine Corps. But the jobs on the outside and understanding the complex nature of civilian world in my head, up in my brain, was very hard for me to get to understand. I didn't understand um, it was kind of lax, like nothing really got done. It got done when it got done. And there was no sense of urgency. It was just kind of like, you get here when you get here. And everything is not about getting a task done, but it's pretty much 90% of it was showing up, which they always said 90% of success is showing up. The problem I ran into is that once I had this mentality of go in and get it done, and then that's a good old boomer mentality. I'd work myself out of a job, and I'd sit there and go, well, I don't know what else to do. And that defining word "do" has always been the ruler of my life. But do. What do I need to do? What do I need to do now? It's always been part of my life. It's always been you have to do. And now, being retired, I realize that everything I did, the only reason, there was only one reason I did anything. There was only one reason I did anything at all, besides just curl up in a ball and just hang out. And that was because I needed to get it to have money. No money, no honey. So I was always searching for work. I was always trying to find a way, not a scheme, but like a real legitimate job. I always wanted to find like a legitimate job that I could actually make decent money, um, and help provide for like when my son was being raised. I always wanted just a way to make an honest living. That's what I was taught as a kid, is just find a way to make an honest living. And I realized that I did do all those things. I played that weird game of, show up, be on time, do what's required of you. But I also, in hindsight, started realizing that along the way, a lot of weird stuff happens that does not happen in the military. Not as much, anyway. And one of the main things was the in the military, there's a lack of drama. There's a lack of finger pointing. There's a lack of um, procrastination. In military, things get done ASAP. Whereas in civilian world, uh, even as a cook, I was a lowly cook in the 90s, and I was making, I think, $7 an hour. I was a cook at SeaWorld making $7 an hour. And even with that low level job, as a low level cook, I found that there were people in the organization that would backstab you. There was a whole different, it's a whole different level of fatigue, I guess you could call it, where people would actually want to see you fail. And if you give them an opportunity, they would stab you in the back. It could be something as easy as like not cleaning up after cooking all day, or not clocking out on a break. It's just ridiculous stuff. And so going through all that, I ended up losing a job at SeaWorld making $7 an hour. And I got to a point where it's like, I don't even care anyway, because the jobs, you're not making any money anyway. I think at the time I was living in my vehicle too. If I wasn't living in the vehicle, I was at least riding a bicycle to the job, or a motorcycle, and then trying to survive that way. So that was a civilian job that was a complete rat hell, complete nightmare. And there was no pride in the job at all. It was just, I mean, some of the things I saw, people spitting in food, rotting carcasses of roast beef in the freezer, just horrible stuff that as a tourist, or as anybody who was just eating at a fast food establishment, would just be like, oh my God, that shit goes on? Yeah, it does. Which is one of the reasons why I don't eat out at all anymore. I'd rather just chew on my arm. And then I moved on to different types of employment. working as a loader for Schwann's. And basically, the loader for Schwann's, your job requires basically just loading up pizzas and stuff, hot pockets, that kind of stuff, in the middle of the night. I did that for about a year and a half in New Mexico. It was a decent job. I think it was a $9 an hour job back in the mid '90s, and it helped. It paid for things. You know, it was all right. I drove a beater truck, but there was no satisfaction. There was always this feeling of, when do I get my check? There was no like, oh wow, this is great. I think I'm doing a really good thing. This is great for humanity. I never thought that. I was just like, yeah, you know, when do I get paid? So, and during these times, numerous times, I found myself in some very precarious situations, like being borderline homeless. A couple times I ended up homeless, um, and just things were not going well at all. And I was still working. I was still hanging in there and showing up and doing what I was told and blah blah blah. But in any of these organizations, there's always somebody out there to get you. That's just the way it happens with people when you're working around people. One of the other jobs I had back in the day was just a basic laborer, uh, basically showing up, and you were expected to pick up trash and stuff all day long, which I did. But if I was smart, I'd have found a good place to hide, and then just come out at break time. Be like, hey, here I am. But me being from the Marine Corps background, I was trained to do as I was told, and not kind of skirt, the details, not to just, say I'll get to it when I get to it. There's always somebody that would just get to it. And it worked against me, to be quite honest with you. It worked against me. I maintained that integrity, but I lost a lot of, um, I probably lost a lot of jobs that way by being too punctual, um, and being a yes man that I learned from being in the military. So that's a con of being a service guy, ex-service guy, former veteran, whatever. Is that we were trained to be a monkey and to learn a certain thing and then just perform like a monkey, which worked for a while, but after a while, you don't know how to think because everybody's telling you what to do. In the mid '90s, I went to electrical school and I got into an apprenticeship program. And I made it through the apprenticeship program in 4 years. During that time, I learned all aspects of commercial electrical work. I became a journeyman electrician after my 4 years. And I made really good money. Bought a house, did all kinds of good stuff. Um, and that was probably the only time when I actually learned something like a monkey, and I put it to use. And I actually made good money doing it. And it was very beneficial for me, family, blah, blah, blah. It was a good gig. I had a good run of it. But if I look at everything and I think about now, how society is now, it's kind of creepy because there's no longer this feeling of like, I want to do something that's going to make the world a better place. Because everybody knows that the American economy is destroyed. Uh, it just doesn't work. All you have to do is just look around, see how how frustrated people are. Everything's too expensive. There's no there's a lot of like quiet quitting going on. people just don't want to really even be here. And it kind of makes sense just from me being an old head that's been around forever and I've seen the changes in life. I haven't been able to keep up with like TikTok and all this other stuff because I just, it's just not me. I grew up in a different era. So, and when they say that, there's an equal chance for everybody in life, um, I think I would kind of say, yeah, but, uh, you have to be careful, especially careful who you allow in your circle. Like you can't just let anybody into your scene because you can get screwed. People use people, and I found that was going on even 30 years ago. So the benefits of civilian life is you basically can kind of come and go as you please for the most part. Uh, you do it, you kind of you fall into a place where you just show up, and then once you show up, you can just fart around in some jobs, not all. Um, but for the rest of us who have kind of been left behind, we're way back here going, "Hey, what happened to me?" We're just kind of quietly watching the world at this stage once you get over 60 and doing your own assessment of what you see. Um, so with everything, the experience, about 40 years of being an adult, over 40 years, um, I just see it basically the same, just a different things being different in the sense that it's not as um, the opportunities are much different than they were when I was growing up. And it's more of a lot of things now seem to be more like a popularity contest to see, who looks great, who's doing this, who's doing that on social media. And I saw the whole social media thing starting back in the day, and we just realized that, there's probably nothing that I really wanted anything to do with. But as far as people going in the military at this point, there's not a whole lot out there anymore for uh, for people who are like don't have college education. Um, and if you don't have a college education, then your choices are kind of slim. And if you don't come from a background where your parents kind of helps you with your say your dental work, you went to the doctor, you got your vision checks, your dental checks, and everything else. Um, then you're more likely, and you come from a lower middle class or a low background, you're more likely to smoke, more likely to drink, just because living poor is much more stressful than if you live with means. And that's just from experiencing it that people that come from these uh, lower class backgrounds are typically the ones that recruiters are going to try to recruit because they know that the options in the family are probably limited. And that's kind of where the brainwashing starts. That's where they start to they get you, and they get you because you're young, you're impressionable, and you're probably going to believe what they say because they get you, they're dressed up, they look all professional and great and everything, and they're gonna tell you what you want to hear initially. I'm not slighting the service, but there is a bit of a manipulation going on. When people do go into the service, there is some manipulation. There's no two ways about it that they do use the appearance and the the idea of being something that's bigger than yourself. That's a big one that especially the Marine Corps uses, is that become something bigger than yourself, because without us you're just a nobody, and that's their sell point. Um, my opinion in being a Marine Corps veteran has completely changed from being that proud kid I was over 40 years ago when I walked on the parade deck in my, I think it's an Alpha uniform we call it, or something like Charlie's or something. And there was a sense of pride at the time when I went and graduated boot camp. There was a distinct sense of being proud of what I had accomplished for the last 3 months in boot camp. But now, as I look back on it, I am no longer proud to say that I served in the Marine Corps. And the reason being is because um, a few years ago, I found out that the water at the base at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina was contaminated. Um, and that there was about 1 million Marines that were potentially uh, contaminated with substances in the water that could cause cancer and some other health issues. So the issue I have is the fact that nobody ever said anything about it until a whistleblower came out and said, "Hey, this is." So why my daughter passed away because she was born with some abnormalities, which was tied to the contamination of the water at the base. And as far as that goes, that was known to have been the. It was known that the water was contaminated, but nobody ever said anything about it. So that is one of the reasons why I'm really not too proud of being a Marine veteran. I do not buy into the hype and the nonsense and the manipulation of the whole um, the system, the way the system is operated. It's the same opinion I have of the Catholic Church, where these entities basically uh, they don't have a thought process of work hard, play later. They have the process of let me manipulate some people to get what I want, and that's something that I was brought up to not buy into. I'm not going to buy into that. And I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I could see it even back in the day, where people would, come around with a little freaking tray and throw it in front of your face and expect you to cough up some money. I no longer feel that way about any of these entities that promote military lifestyle that talk about how great it is and how we can change your life. Because at the end of the day, if you want to use that phrase, a lot of us veterans have been long forgotten about. I'm one of them. We have been forgotten about and basically left to stew in our own juices. They say that there is things available, but they're very far and slim. So, for that reason, between the two, between being a civilian worker or a civilian and being a military person, I would strongly advise that getting a formal education, a decent education through a college or university, um, is probably a much better bet than going in the military if you're going in as an enlisted person. Um, if you go to college, by the time you're in your early to mid 20s, you already have a degree, and you'll be on the fast track to making $300,000 like my doctor does a year. Meanwhile, a lot of us veterans and people that served in the military in the 80s are basically just kind of quietly just shown the door and living on under $2,000 a month. If you're fine with that, then you're fine with that. And I'm to a point where I'm pretty cool with it because I figure it's better than nothing. But then you also have to look at the fact that a lot of military people are have nowhere to live. So if you ask why military people end up, veterans are so get homeless, that's exactly why. Because you have the civilian work attitude, you have the military work attitude. Military work attitude is get it done now. Civilian attitude is we'll get back to it when we get to it. So I played both sides of the coin, rolled the dice, and did both of them. And but my top pick would be to stay in the civilian world and get a good job or get rich some other way. Thanks for watching.